Thank you, Charan, and everyone else. I hope you can hear me. Otherwise, I know you would tell me. It's very nice to see some of the people that I can recognize, some of the names at least. I'm going to present work that I'm doing with a number of co-authors, including Sneha Krispal, who is also present in the meeting, and she can join and answer any questions at a later stage as we go along. So let me share the screen. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how caste maintains and increases economic inequality. So the agenda as far as this presentation goes is to talk about economic inequality and the role of caste. I would be mostly talking about inequality and use caste as an illustration because what I'm talking about applies to all types of inequality, whether it is race, gender, or any type of privilege that you can take of. And caste is one example, a very good example of it, but this is also a very generalizable kind of thing. Then I look at the role of corporations in inequality. That's what I kind of specialize in, and look at some HR practices and how they can be influenced by caste. So the first thing that I'd like to clarify is that when we talk about economic inequality, Vamsi has presented the wealth inequality, and there is also income inequality, but economic inequality is much more than wealth or income inequality. Wealth or income inequalities are the financial manifestations of economic inequality, right? So what we do is to look at the economic inequality in a much broader sense, very much similar to Amartya Sen's ideas on inequality, and say that economic inequality is uneven distribution in the endowment and or access to financial and non-financial resources in a society, which manifests in differential abilities and opportunities to engage in value creation, appropriation, and distribution. This is a very academic definition. Some of you would be able to relate to it, but I'll try to simplify it as we go along. So I've underlined a few things here. As you can see, we're talking about resources, both endowment, that is what you possess, and access, what you can get access to, and abilities and opportunities. So if we look at, or if we expand on that, endowments are what you have. So this can be various types of capital. Economic capital would be wealth and assets that Vamsi has presented. And there are also other types of resources or other types of capital, like social capital, which is the relationships that you have, which get you access to resources and information and knowledge. And then the cultural capital that you carry because of your upbringing and because of the various activities that you engage in. And then you also have the symbolic capital, which is what actually signifies you. Like, when you mention your achievements or your characteristics, what does it mean? So symbolic capital, I mean, if we talk about the theorization, I think it is much different in the context of caste than the way it has been theorized. So then, so this is the part of endowments, like, the various type of resources are capitals that you have or that you can possess. And the second part is the access, what you can get through these resources, right? So this could be like health and education. Health, by health, we talk about a number of other determinants of health, like whether it's good nutrition, whether it is access to water, access to housing, a number of these kind of things that we would be looking at. And also the access to education. So these would now be called as human capital, or those would kind of reflect in human capital. And the other access that we look at is the markets and access to markets and institutions, right? So that would be in the form of employment and entrepreneurship. So what we have is the economic capital, which is the financial resource. social, cultural, and symbolical capitals, which are the non-financial resources, and you have health and education, which is the abilities, and then access to markets and institutions, which are the opportunities. So let's see how caste affects these endowments and access. And as all of you know, are fairly familiar with this, caste fixes the position of people based on birth in a graded hierarchy, with each group being more superior than the other, right? So that actually gives you a symbolic capital. There is a great power, or there is an understanding of what, let's say, like a Brahmin means, or what a Vaishya means, or what a Kshatriya means, or what a Shudra means, or what a Dalit means. So you don't have to really show anything else. The moment you identify, there is a lot of things that come with it. And the second aspect is that the caste has also assigned the occupation based on that position, right? So what it means is that Brahmins have occupied roles that involved roles like priests, advisors, researchers, scholars, philosophers, thinkers, writers, all the kind of roles that involved knowledge. And as the economy modernized, it also moved into a number of other knowledge-related roles. Right? And similarly, Vaishyas were more into the business and trade and owning of farms, and Kshatriyas were more into the into the roles of administration. They were kings and soldiers, and then you have Shudras, who were doing manual jobs or physical activities. Right? So this occupation assignment from high caste to low caste, upper caste, lower caste, also means what value you can get out of it. So the high value occupations are assigned to the upper caste, and low value occupations are assigned to the lower caste. And third, caste also determined the family life and social interactions, right? So that's what your social capital is. So this is what actually makes it difficult to see caste for a lot of people, is because caste determines whom you marry, and all your relationships look like your relationships, and there's no caste attached to it, right? So, and because of your group membership, or the fact that you belong to a particular caste, brings a lot of relationships to you. So that's the social capital. And then finally, you have the access to education, resources, and dignity, which determine the human and cultural capitals. Again, whether you've been able to access education or arts, or water, sanitation, and whether you've been treated as an equal human being, or superior human being, or an inferior human being. All of these have great effect on individuals, how they develop. Right? So in short, all the upper caste had the high level of resources and opportunities, and lower caste had a low level of resources and opportunities. So this has happened over centuries or thousands of years, and has resulted in a system that is highly unequal. So what is value creation and appropriation distribution? Is that with value creation, we are creating a product or a service that somebody is willing to buy, pay money and willing to buy. Appropriation is when you sell that product at the most price, or at closest to the cost that the customer is willing to buy, and also make it at the lowest price. So you're trying to maximize your profit out of this. And distribution is when you take that profit and distribute it across the people who have contributed to making the product or service. Right? So if you look at economic inequality, the various aspects of it, so what you have here is the endowments. That is what you have, or what you get, what you possess, and then that determines your access, what you can actually get in terms of either loans, or your education or health, and your access to jobs and entrepreneurship. And that determines what you can actually make, your compensation, your mobility, your status, and your security. So this is how this whole system, based on what you have and based on what you can access, that determines what you can make. And this goes back to creating your endowments again. So that's what we show here in this particular diagram, where uneven distribution in various capitals and uneven access to resource and opportunities together results in value creation and value appropriation, are influences to the extent that people can engage in this, and then that determines the value distribution. So as a result of all of this are happening over several years, what we have is wealth inequalities that that Vamsi has presented. So I'm not going to talk much on this one, but as you can see, like most of the billionaires are those who traditionally come from the merchant caste, and others who were also landowners, sold that land or converted that, and then also set up business and became billionaires. Right? So, but let's look at what happens within the organizations, right? So this is what I am primarily interested in. So the businesses play a central role in maintaining and increasing inequality via various things, like various human resource practices and corporate social responsibility. So this is a paper that we have recently written, and I have provided links to these articles at the end of the presentation on the last slide, so you can take a look at those. So what we have seen with respect to the billionaires is also replicated within the organization. So here, so this is the share of major social groups in different occupations, and you can see, like the high caste and some OBCs being highly represented in the in more upper and middle management level jobs, and others are lower castes and OBCs and Muslims and Dalits being represented in the jobs that are less valuable or lower level in the organization. And this is another study which has examined the board characteristics and their caste composition. And as you can see, like the Brahmins occupy 54% of the board positions, and Vaishyas in about 35. So together they account about 90%. And if you also add the other upper castes, we are talking about 95% being occupied by the top three castes. So that by itself does not seem very, very surprising unless we really know what is the percentage of people who belong to those castes. And these numbers vary depending on the data, but the most that we can say is, like their share of in the total population is about 14%. So the 14% really occupying about 95% of the positions, and that you would see in the same is also seen in the faculty at IIMs and also at other top institutes, that about 95% being from the top caste. Right? So now how does this happen? So we have some examples here, right? So there's some ads here which have asked for only Brahmins or Agarwal Vaishya, or groups becoming part of the even in the US, the tech companies, the groups being formed based on caste in different units. Right? So it might, if it were like this, it would have been very easy. But this is not how it operates. The caste operates in a very, very invisible fashion, right? So what does it mean? So let's take a look at how the privilege really operates in case of hiring. So here I have added, I've tried to look at various steps of hiring, and then I've put human, social, cultural, and symbolic capitals in the columns. So a lot of times the positions are not necessarily advertised, and these positions are not available to people without privilege. So all lower caste individuals would not be able to get any idea about these jobs. So this happens through the referrals, right? And let's go to the advertisement. Once a company advertises a job, now that has to be seen by the potential applicants. Of course, they can see, but also they can be alerted to it by those who are in their social network. So these are, these are ways in which the candidates get to know about the jobs. But whether they apply or not is also determined by how the organization projects itself, um, in terms of its culture, whether for example, if it projects itself as a very aggressive company, then certain type of people go for it. If it projects itself as an intellectual, um, spiritual company, certain other type of people go for it. And what kind of organizational imagery do you put out in terms of the people that you choose for your advertisements or for your company web pages? So these can have an effect on whether individuals apply for these positions or not. So that is at the stage of the advertisement. Now let's move to the stage of screening, right? So we know that many studies have shown that at the time of screening, people from underprivileged backgrounds, whether it is Black people, or whether it is women, or whether it is lower castes or Muslims, all of them are discriminated because they can figure out from the name who the person is, right? So we know that they are screened out. There are countless examples of this, and I'm sure I don't need to give you these examples. You know many of these. And the other way that they can be screened out is through the hobbies and interests, which are formed through the cultural capital, or which are which are represented by the hobbies and interests, right? And then in the interview process, if you clear all these steps and if you get to the interview, that is where your education and experience comes into play. But there are also other things that come into play, like they would ask you about family background, that would tell about the social network or social capital that you carry. And there are also cultural fit or cultural similarities that individuals look for, those who are hiring, that is the hiring managers look for people who are similar to them. And there are also, like, these status signals that you can exhibit in the interview, like what would it mean for you to carry certain type of accessories with you, or what would it mean for you to carry, let's say, an Om tattoo or a swastika tattoo that is visible versus something else, right? So you can see these symbols affecting the assessment, not necessarily in a very conscious way, but in a very unconscious way. And then finally, you have the reference checks, where depending on how privileged you are, you can get high quality and high status references, and that can have an effect on the job. So as you can see here, what seems like a very simple hiring process, which is supposed to look for education and experience and skills and abilities and those kind of things, is a very socio-cultural and political process in which a number of other things also come into play that makes it difficult for people to enter the organizations. And once they enter, then advancing is another aspect, and we wouldn't have time for that. But I just want to give you a sense of this. So I'll close with a couple of thoughts. One is that it is often believed that caste is a problem because it discriminates certain people, right? No, that is not the case. Caste is a problem for everyone, whether it's an upper caste or a lower caste, because we know from literature that everybody gets affected, and it does affect your ability to think rationally, your approach towards life, your approach towards work. So all of these are affected by your position in the inequality system or caste system. Right? The second thing that I'd like to say is that caste is not a problem again for organization for individuals, but it is also a problem for organizations, that is businesses and economies, because that affects employee attitudes and behaviors. And some of the examples that you're seeing now in the organizations in Silicon Valley with respect to discriminations, right? So those have an effect on organizational performance. And if people get alienated, if people feel alienated in the organization, that has an effect on performance. This again, we know from research that this happens. And if a large portion of the population, in case of India, for example, is not able to pursue productive opportunities, then that has an effect on economy, like how much the economy can grow and how much the country can progress. So I think these are the things that we need to be talking about, rather than thinking that if we don't talk, then everybody is equal. Right? So with that, I would like to thank you. And